Coming up on Arirang News, President Moon Jae-in gives his New Year's press conference pledging action to get home prices under control by building more units, to get vaccines rolled out as soon as possible, and to get talks going again with North Korea. The de facto head of Samsung Group, Jae-yong, is back in prison, sentenced to 2.5 years. The court told to rehear the case based on a higher amount paid in bribes to former President Park Geun-hye. The court says Samsung's corrective actions were not enough. And South Korea's Drug Safety Ministry is advised by experts to approve the COVID-19 treatment made by the local drug maker Celltrion. After a third trial, that'll let the drug be used more widely and be exported. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. We start with President Moon Jae-in's New Year's press conference, which took place this morning. In light of the pandemic, only 20 reporters were there in person, but 100 others attended through a video link. Some of the topics were potential pardons for former presidents, soaring home prices, and Moon's peace initiative with North Korea. Kim Min-ji has the wrap-up.
President Moon Jae-in says now is not the time to talk about special pardons for two former presidents, Lee Myung-bak and Park Geun-hye. He said during his New Year's press conference on Monday that court procedures have just finished and that the corruption charges dealt a huge damage to the nation and caused enormous pain for the Korean people. The issue had become a political hot potato recently, and the president has long stressed the need for unity.
과거의 잘못을 부정하고 또 재판 결과를 인정하지 않는 차원에서 사면을 요구하는 이런 움직임에 대해서는 국민들의 상식이 용납하지 않을 것이라 생각하고 저 역시 받아들이기가 어렵습니다. 더 깊은 고민을 해야 될 때가 올 것이라고 생각합니다. 그러나 그에 대해서도 대전제는 국민들에게 공감대가 형성되어야 한다는 것입니다.
Another hot topic was soaring housing prices, with Moon vowing to increase the supply of housing to stabilize the market. He said as well as curbing speculation, the government will roll out new measures by next month.
공공재개발, 그리고 또 역세권 개발, 그리고 또 신규 택지의 가감한 개발 등을 통해서 시장이 예상하는 수준을 훨씬 뛰어넘는 그런 부동산의 공급을 특별하게 늘림으로써
President Moon also vowed thorough efforts to prepare for the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines, stressing that it could start earlier than the current February timeline through the COVAX facility program. He also brushed off views that South Korea was late in procuring vaccines. And he addressed concerns of potential side effects.
부작용에 대해서 정부로부터 보호받지 않고 개인이 맞으면 피해를 이렇게 그냥 일방적으로 있게 되는 일이 있지는 않을까 이런 염려는 전혀 하시지 않아도 됩니다. 다만 만약에 정말 백신에 대한 불안감이 아주 높아져서 백신을 기피하는 상황이 되고 그렇게 해서 뭔가 솔선수범이 필요한 상황이 된다면 저는 그것도 피하지 않겠습니다.
As for his peace initiative with North Korea, Moon reaffirmed his determination to get denuclearization talks back on track. He said that with the new administration in the U.S., he hopes that Washington and Pyongyang can also kickstart efforts, not from square one, but from the positive achievements from the past.
지금 바이든 신행정부는 톱다운 방식의 회담보다는 보톰업 방식의 회담 방식을 더 선호하는 것으로 그렇게 알려져 있습니다. 싱가포르 선에서 합의된 그 원칙을 구체화시키는 그런 방안에 대해서 북미 간에 보다 좀 더 속도감 있게 긴밀하게 대화를 해 나간다면 그것은 충분히 해법을 찾을 수 있는 그런 문제라고 생각합니다. 또 그 해법이 찾을 수 있도록 한국도 이 최선의 역할을 다하겠습니다.
President Moon also expressed hope for another inter-Korean summit, saying it has been agreed upon between the two sides. He said it doesn't necessarily need to be a visit to Seoul, and that he is willing to sit down with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un anytime, anywhere. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The de facto leader of Samsung Group, Jae-yong, was sent back to prison today, now 3 years since he was let out, sentenced to 2.5 years in the bribery case involving former President Park Geun-hye. With the details, our Kim Do-yeon is on the line. Do-yeon, tell us about the court's decision today.
Devin, so the Seoul High Court ruled that $7.7 million worth of gifts and other funding given to former President Park Geun-hye and a confidant Choi Soon-sil constituted bribes and sentenced the Samsung Electronics vice chairman to 2.5 years. An appeals court was hearing the case again after the Supreme Court in 2019 overturned an appeals decision saying that the sentence it handed down was too lenient. That appeals ruling in 2018 shortened his original 5 years in prison to 2.5, suspended for 4 years, which meant he was let go. The bribes acknowledged by the court include 3 horses Lee gave to Choi Soon-sil's daughter, along with some monetary transactions. The ruling is most likely final. He can appeal, but there's not much chance of overturning this decision, as it was requested by the highest court. The business tycoon hoped to avoid prison time, as the appeals court said last year that it would take into account remorse shown by Samsung going forward and its efforts to prevent any further illicit activities. An independent compliance committee at the company over the past year has been working to fulfill the court's requirements, but the court said today that the results were not good enough to warrant lowering the penalty. That's all I have for you at this hour. Back to you, Devin.
All right, Kim Do-yeon, thank you for that. We'll check back in with you later this evening. Now, the number of coronavirus cases reported in South Korea on Monday was below 400 for the first time since November. There's still a ban nationwide on gatherings of more than 4 people, but as of today, coffee shops can have customers eat and drink inside, and other businesses like gyms and singing rooms can reopen. Min So-kyun has more.
South Korea reported 389 new COVID-19 cases on Monday, the first day with fewer than 400 infections in nearly 2 months. Of them, 366 were locally transmitted and 23 were from overseas. This brings the country's total cases to over 72,000. The downward trend in cases has been attributed to tougher social distancing measures and mass virus testing. Amid the slowdown, health authorities have decided to ease restrictions. Starting today, stores are resuming their businesses in line with the country's eased measures. People can now dine in at coffee shops until 9 p.m., but they must wear face masks at all times except when eating or drinking. Those who refuse to do so can be fined 100,000 won, or about $90. Gyms, singing rooms, and cram schools in the Greater Seoul area will also be allowed to run their businesses under limited capacity. No more than 1 person is permitted in an 8 square meter indoor space, and these businesses are also required to close at 9 p.m. Group fitness classes like aerobics and Zumba, however, remain closed. Churches and temples can also hold services, but only at 10% of capacity in Seoul and its surrounding areas and 20% in other parts of the country. The current Level 2.5 social distancing guidelines for the Greater Seoul area and Level 2 guidelines for the rest of the country will be in effect until the end of this month. Min So-kyun, Arirang News.
A panel of experts have recommended that the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety grant conditional use authorization to the South Korean pharmaceutical giant Celltrion for its COVID-19 treatment candidate. That'll enable the drug to be used more generally in South Korea and to export it to other countries. Celltrion's working on a monoclonal antibody treatment called CTP59, also known as Regdanvimab. The ministry said Monday it was advised to give the go-ahead on the condition that the drug goes through another 3rd trial. Clinical data so far show the drug can shorten COVID-19 recovery times by almost 3.5 days. But in terms of how long it takes to test negative, it did not show any significant effect. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Yang Jun-seok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, good to have you back on.
Happy to be here.
Well, stocks in New York closed lower on Friday despite the expectation of big stimulus measures from the incoming Biden administration. Futures lower right now too ahead of Monday's open. What's the story in the global markets?
Okay, well, as you said, Thursday and Friday, all 3 major New York indices fell. The analysts are saying that the markets had already incorporated Biden's large stimulus package, though that explains why the markets didn't rise, but I don't think it explains why the markets fell. Now, there is a lot of negative factors in the U.S. economy right now, coronavirus and lagging vaccine distribution, concerns about riots over the weekend, and the inauguration by pro-President Trump forces. And then the analysts mentioned that even though the stimulus package was announced, Democrats only control the House and Senate very narrowly, so they may not be able to get the budget through. But I think those analyses are a bit weak because, well, it's always been there. It always had been a problem, and we all knew it, so it doesn't particularly explain why it fell last Thursday and Friday. Most likely explanation seems to be that there is more and more concerns about overvaluation of the market and possible bubble. There was a survey made by a trading company called E-Trade in the United States. They made a survey of millionaires, and it turns out that only 9% of millionaires surveyed think that market is not in a bubble. 16% of these millionaires surveyed believe that they are in a U.S. market is in a bubble. 46% believe that the market is somewhat of a bubble, and 29% believe that market is approaching a bubble. So while these millionaires are concerned that the market is either in or approaching a bubble, they still say that they are going to invest in the stock market, but they will rearrange their portfolios. But it does, I think, indicate that markets are becoming more and more nervous about overvaluation. The European markets fell on Friday. Asian markets, Hang Seng and Shanghai, rose at the end of last week, and today we had China had some very good news about their growth rate. Fourth quarter growth rate was 6.5% year per year. The growth rate for 2020 as a whole was 2.3%. They beat the IMF forecast of 1.9%, so they're feeling fairly optimistic right now. On the other hand, Nikkei fell at the end of last week and today.
All right, Professor, thanks so much for that. I guess we're going to have to leave it there. Do we have time for another question? But we can take a look at the Korean stocks for a minute, where the Kospi closed sharply lower, and it seems on that decline in U.S. stocks, but also some profit-taking, perhaps. A big sell-off today. What's happening in the local market?
Okay, well, another factor was that Samsung Vice Chairman Jae-yong was sentenced to 2 years and 6 months in prison for bribery. The market fell somewhat after that sentence was announced, and because Kospi market has been so dependent on Samsung Electronics as a growth driver, that may account for a lot of the sell-off today. The market was down 2.3%, ended at 13.93. Kosdaq was down today, minus 1.96% to 945.50.
Got it. All right, and it's the start of a new week, Professor. What's on your radar in the days ahead?
Okay, well, for Korean statistics, the Producers Price Index for December comes out this week, and the Lunar New Year economic policy comes out this week also. And then the loan program for micro businesses affected by the coronavirus will start today, so we'll see how much effect that has over the next few days. And then foreign statistics, European Central Bank has a speech on monetary policy this week, which should be interesting to see how the Europeans are going to handle the current economic situation.
Got it. All right, Professor, thanks so much, and we will catch up again later this week.
Thank you.
The city of Seoul is demonstrating its strength in terms of innovation in a new video showing robots on the streets serving as police officers, firefighters, and disinfection workers. The robots were invented by the world-renowned robotics engineer and UCLA professor Dennis Hong. He appears in the video to say that in the post-COVID-19 era, robots and AI can help keep Seoul safe. The video has been translated into 10 languages, including English, and is up on the city's social media channels. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.